Hello and welcome back to another episode on Journey to Authenticity, a podcast helping you to become fully authentic on your journey to success. I'm your host, Braiden Belnap, and I'm a human just like you, striving to build a dream life, all while I stay true to myself. But what if you're in a position where you're feeling inauthentic and stuck due to comparison? You're shoulding yourself. I should be here. I should do that. I should be this. I should be able to do this consistently without even thinking about it. That's exactly why we have David Grange joining us today, because he's gone through that. He's gone to the point in his life where he's completely transformed his life, being able to vacation as he wishes, being able to go on the adventures in nature as he wishes, being able to hang out with his family as he wishes, because he realized everything that he wanted was in his grasp. If he thought it, it would be his. That in mind, welcome to the show, David.
Thanks, Braiden.
Absolutely. It feels like Mike Sell introduced us, and
Yeah.
man, this has been a journey podcasting, and it's selfish. Not really selfish, it's selfless, but I love talking to people like amazing people like you.
Awesome. Well, I enjoy it too, so it's great.
Absolutely. Well, just to jump straight into things, what inspired you to pursue coaching?
Huge motivator was my kids. But that was maybe the straw that broke the camel's back, because for years, for decades, I've loved speaking. I've loved connecting with people. I've loved talking strategies for life. And so I just didn't know how to do it necessarily or have like a framework for it. And so I was working in luxury hospitality, and that was a wonderful career path that led me to working in Maui for a year with my wife, to working in Sundance Resort in Utah, and now working in the Sun Valley area. So I bounced around some awesome places. But one thing I hated, Braiden, was I was working on everyone else's like vacation days. Like they'd come here to vacation and I was working all the holidays. I was working long nights, when everyone's home with their families. And it was just bugging. It was just weighing on me. I was like, man, I love what I do, but I don't know a way out. And then coincidentally, I ran into two coaches on a trail here locally, and they were very like ordinary people. And I mean that with love, because I always thought to be a coach, you had to be like an ex-professional athlete, or like died and come back to life, or like done these incredible things. And these people were like normal people. And I met them, and long story short, that was an inspired conversation that led to me going back to school to become a certified coach, and then started my dream job of coaching people full time, coaching, speaking, living my dream.
That's the way to go. So are you friends with those guys that you met on the trail?
I wish I was. It was just passing, and they said they just got back from floating the Grand Canyon for a month, and I was like, oh wow, what do you do that allows you to, take a month off work? And they're like, oh, we're both coaches. I'm like, no way. Awesome. So that was it. And then we went on our way. But yeah, I wish I was, but that was definitely an integral part to my story.
So you're like, not only can I not take a month off, and not only can I not take vacation for the holidays, it's like,
Yeah.
if they're doing that, I'm going to go get that.
Heck yes. And for me too, that was when my kids were really young, and it was like, I want to make changes to maximize my time and have more flexibility with my time and be able to be home more. And now, I mean, if you crunch the numbers, I make more in 2 days of work than I was making in a month in my previous hospitality jobs. So for time and income, opportunity, like the sky's the limit.
And that's the true freedom, right? And that's, I mean, you've achieved a lifestyle that people dream of. But the cool thing about you is you can show them that it doesn't need to be a dream. You show them that it can be a reality.
Totally. Well, I'm even blown away by, we are coaches, right? We're coaches, we're speakers, we're creating programs for people, but there are so many ways to live your dream, and with job opportunities that it's like, man, if you can think it, you can achieve it. So it really comes down to people's own creativity of what they want to create. Where can they create value in the world, and how can they share it and support other people?
Absolutely. There's a topic that I talk about often is that if we were to live forever, there would be two types of people.
Mm,
One group of people that thinks, well, what's the point? Like, why should I go work so hard? I'm gonna live forever anyways.
yeah.
And then there's gonna be the people that think I get to live forever, which means I have unlimited time to accomplish my dreams.
Mm,
Like, no matter the challenge, no matter the adversity, I will accomplish it as long as I never give up.
yeah.
The
Yeah.
thing is, you can, in today's society, as far as I'm concerned, I'm trying to live till 120. We may not live forever, but we're going to live a long time.
Well, heck yeah.
So that still is the case today. We have people that find the reasons why not to achieve their dreams. And
Yeah.
then we have the people that say, hey, let's go get it. And the moment that you're willing not to ever give up is the moment that your dreams become a when they will happen over if they will happen.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful point. It sparks a conversation I had recently with a buddy, and I made the comment that I work to live, but I do not live to work. Kind of that common phrase that we hear. And it's really interesting. He really called me out on it. And I could tell because he is wired totally different from me, where his work is his hobby, is his passion, is his love. And so he lives to work. Whereas I have a lot of different hobbies and passions. And so my job, my coaching, my speaking, it's just a part of my life. It's a big part of my life and I love it, but it's a part of the many other things in my life. And so it's interesting kind of discussing that with him because I think that's important for people when they're taking advice from anyone to realize the type of person that they are or what they value or where their hobbies or their priorities rest. Because, man, it's so different for each person. And as coaches, that's why it's so valuable to work with coaches because they're not saying, hey, here's one recipe that fits all, but here's one recipe that really works. And maybe here's 12 others that I coach towards. Let's figure out which one's the best for you. And that's priceless.
Well, that's the way to go because it comes down to who the person is, right?
Totally.
But on a deeper level, figuring out who that person is and what the world has taught them to be. And then helping them dive into who they truly are.
Yeah.
Because we're always being true to a part of ourselves, right?
Hopefully. Yeah.
We have authentic parts of ourselves and inauthentic parts of ourselves. The inauthentic parts of ourselves we genuinely learned. We needed to survive as a child or in a certain situation, and it became part of us.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's important to become aware of that, to let that part of us go so that we can truly become the best versions of ourselves.
Yeah. That's a skill to unlearn some of those. That's it. Yeah.
Unlearning I would say, is harder than learning. So
I say amen to that, Braiden.
So obviously you live a beautiful life. I follow you on Instagram and I see all the fun, the kayaking, the things that you do with your wife and your family. I mean, was it always like that where you're traveling around having a good time? Like, what was the hard parts of your life?
That's a great point. Well, I would say that's always been in me to have freedom to express my adventure, pursuits and to really pursue it full throttle. And I say full throttle, but I still have limitations with raising 4 kids that are under the age of 8 and, supporting a wife with her work and growing my business. So there's still limitations, but I love the game of maximizing your time, of just seeing what's possible in short amounts of time. And that has led me to really kind of do some pretty incredible things with limited time. And I love that in talking with my clients who are typically men, typically dads themselves. And they have these limiting beliefs of like, oh, I'd love to go do this, but I don't have the time. Or I'd love to go do that, but I don't have the skills or the wherewithal. And so, I mean, one small, well, huge for me, but one quick example of this is I wanted to get back to Europe. I traveled there when I was younger. wanted to get back. I was like, man, I've got 4 kids now, and I want to kind of go beast out in Europe. So how can I do that? What's the biggest thing I could do in the shortest amount of time with being away from my family, but also like really scratch that itch to go big and do something. And so I learned about this concept called misogi. And misogi is a Japanese concept of basically doing one thing every year that's like incredibly hard, 50% success rate, and you do it solo. So long story short, I had the thought to, what if I ran a trail marathon in the Alps? And I did it in one country. And then as I looked at the map and I saw all the other countries that have the Alps going through them, I thought, man, what if I run like a couple marathons in a couple different countries in a couple different days? That blossomed into eventually pursuing and trying to do 5 trail marathons in 5 consecutive days in 5 different countries. And that was the pursuit, Braiden. And I don't want to, give the punchline, but I freaking did it last August. 1 year ago today, did it. And it was incredibly successful with so many highs and lows, and sleeping in my rental car and driving across 7 countries in 7 days, running 5 trail marathons with enough elevation gain that was equivalent to hiking Everest twice in 5 days. So it was monumental. And yet I'm not a professional athlete. I rented a car. I slept in the car. Like, I mapped it together beforehand. These were not like certain routes. And I share that because it was eye-opening for me too. Like, I did the trip in under $1,600. I was able to maximize 7 days and do something life-changing. And my kids seeing me train for that, my kids following the journey of that, they were setting goals that were different. My wife, is it any wonder that she was in some of the best shape of her life? Simply because the ripple effects of someone going big and trying to do hard things. And even if I failed, the training alone was worth it. So I share that with you and your audience because it's such a nice reminder to all of us that our dreams, the things, if we can dream it, we can achieve it. But we've got to keep dreaming. And unfortunately, society oftentimes beats us down to stop dreaming and to only think of what happens if things go wrong, and what happens, if we're rejected or if we fail. It's like, man, see that limit. For me, it was run as far and as fast as you can in the shortest amount of time through 5 different countries. Like, see, that's possible. So
and you sound crazy saying that, but it's the crazy things that we do in life that build our skin up, build who we become.
Character. Every goal that my clients come to me with, I always anchor it to character. Like, how is this going to build your character, and what character is it building? And so they might say, oh man, I'd be more disciplined, if I do this, or gosh, I'd be more confident or competent. It's like, yeah, you would. And then what's available to you? If you keep building on that. Last August, my 555, as I call it, that was not a one and done thing. That now created a pattern that I will continue to live and continue to challenge myself with for the rest of my life. Absolutely. So that's what's so exciting too. You change your character, you change your dreams, you change your results, you change your life.
Going. Absolutely. So was there any time in that process that you thought about quitting?
Oh, heck yes. In the first marathon, it was in Switzerland. And I started later in the day because I actually went to church that morning. I was like, yeah, it's a good idea to go to church right before some huge thing. So I went to church, but that set me back. Instead of starting the run at 6, like I would have done otherwise, I started 11 a.m. So I'm starting this run 5 miles into it. I had done 5,000 feet of elevation gain, which is significant. And halfway through that, that's when the demons were showing up of just, there's no freaking way I can do 4.5 more of these. Like, no way. And so that's where also I was thinking long-term, right? Like, I can't do 4.5 more of these. But I shifted my perspective of, but I can go to that ridge. And I had to think really small. I can go to that ridge, and then I can go to that one, and then the next one. And it just kind of pulled me along and pulled me through it. And at the halfway mark, I did have a sit-down water break. And I thought, what if I just do half marathons? Like, what if I just do half marathons? And I do 5 half marathons in 5 consecutive days in 5 different countries. That's still pretty awesome. But for me, that wasn't the goal I set. I set out to do 5 marathons in 5 days in 5 countries. And so I would know, even if the world was like, oh, that's a cool adventure, Dave, I would know that I sold myself short. And so right then and there, I made the choice right at that moment that I wasn't going to stop unless I finished or unless I was broken, injured, and I never had those thoughts again show up in the other 4.5 more marathons. So I made this decision once.
You highlighted a part of my process in coaching is obviously vision, as you know. You set out a goal and it was non-negotiable. In our vision of life, it's important to see our past, our present. But wait, it's not the next step. It's the fact that God has a vision for you, for who you'll become and what you'll achieve.
Yeah.
Then you have that life vision, right? Those visions that are big, ambitious. You don't necessarily have the plan to get there yet, but then you have your next goals. And your next goals are always non-negotiable.
That's a good point.
Because those are, right? It's like your 5 marathons across 5 different countries, across 5 different days.
Yeah.
Your next goal was the 5 marathons, 5 countries, 5 consecutive days.
Right.
But your plan was that next ridge, that next river, that next tree.
Baby steps, right? Right.
You broke it down, and in turn, you found success.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
One thing that's been really interesting for me, Braiden, is I love coaching. I love speaking. I love helping groups of people, individuals. It's so rewarding. And yet I hit a wall sometimes of my own limiting beliefs in my professional life. Whereas in my personal life with pack rafting and going deep in the backcountry and 555, like I want to say I like max out, like live stellar is my coaching. It's like, oh man, I live stellar with my personal life. Like I am to the max of that, confident, competent, I'm going full throttle. And so I notice like sometimes I have this uneven or unequal mindsets where then with my professional life, I'm like, oh, wow, I am totally playing it safe. I'm totally like just staying in my pocket of comfort zone with my coaching. Whereas in my personal life, I love pushing my body, my mind, my boundaries. And so that's one thing I'm trying to be better at myself is like bridging that gap of my professional life or my personal life and maxing out and living stellar. And then also letting that be rocket fuel for my professional life and really seeing what's possible and being brave and courageous and, doing that crazy idea just to see what happens from it.
I mean, why not, right? I mean, the worst that happens is you learn something and then you pick yourself back up.
Totally. But that's hard for even me. Sometimes I'm noticing of like, oh man, I just really want to play safe, or like it's hard to get rejected, so I'll just keep it in the pocket of these safe clients. Yeah, I've tried to be more brave though. And like when I'm meeting with people, it's like, hey, what incredible thing are you excited to accomplish? Like I want to work with people who are really going after something exciting and big that's so big that they might not even have told other people about it. That's who I want to work with, because I needed that with my Masogi, with my 555. I mean, I told a few people and they're like, wait, what? Why?
Like,
are
you
sure?
Why not?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's who I love helping, is the people who might not have the support system, might not have the mindsets yet, or the people around them to build them up to do those incredible things.
Well, and you highlight a very good point. Your environment's everything. If you have a big goal and you tell 5 people with small minds, you're probably going to think that you're psycho.
It's brutal. It's brutal. Yep.
But if you went and told 5 people with big thinking minds, they'd be like, oh, that's a little small. You definitely could do it. And then you
Right.
think that it's like so minute.
Totally.
You
Totally.
need to encompass that environment as you build these goals. And sometimes that just means that you go get a coach because they know it's possible.
Well, and they'll see you that way. I don't know their histories. I don't care about their histories. I care about who they are right now and what they're wanting to go after. And then let's talk skills and habits and help them achieve that.
Absolutely.
I'm reminded of a Nike commercial that it's this awesome, montage of these athletes, and some are paraplegics and others have limitations, but then they achieve these incredible things. And at the end, they say, don't ask if your dreams are too big, ask if they're not big enough. And it's like, oh my gosh, I could watch that like every morning. Just used for the day, right? That, am I playing it safe today, or what am I going to do to really make a difference?
Absolutely. You got to win the day. Every moment's not going to be one. Let's be real.
Sure.
We're human.
Sure.
We're going to stub our toe once in a while. We might get a little frustrated once in a while. That's okay. Did you win your day?
Yeah.
Because your moments turn into days, and your days turn into weeks. Weeks create months, months create years, and years create your life.
Yep.
Are you going to compound your life and your moments in a positive manner in the way that you want to be and what you want to do?
Beautiful.
Or are you going to compound your life into who you don't want to be and what you don't want to do?
Yeah. I love it.
It's a simple question.
Yep.
I mean, I know everybody listening right now is like, heck yeah, I want to, be the best version of myself and go achieve the greatest success that I possibly can. But are you?
Right.
Because, you mentioned two very valuable questions that have a double-edged sword. Why and what? See, the why, if you just ask why, it's generally like, why are you doing that? It comes in a sense of judgment. But the way you say it is, what if? Like, this simple transition of that question can completely transform and transcend your level of thinking.
Yeah.
The what question? What if I fail? Well, what if you succeed?
Yeah.
Just completely just making a 180 shift of the same questions which completely transcend the person that you become.
Totally. And the concept rings true. One key that unlocked this idea for me, though, and again, I'm not perfect at it, but I have moments when I'm definitely stronger, is the concept of rejection therapy. Rejection therapy. And there's a couple like YouTube videos on this, but one of the things I loved, it's a TED Talk. And this guy read about seeking rejection for I think it was 30 days, and how you seek moments to be rejected. And it totally transforms your approach to handling rejection. So, for example, it's like, ask a stranger for $100, right? It's like, oh my gosh, like that, cringe, right? Or like one of them was, take a plant and go door to door to find someone who you can plant it in their backyard, right? Like random stuff. But this guy, he's like, I'm not going to do it for 30 days. I'm going to do it for 100 days. And so for 100 days, he sought moments to be rejected. And what he realized from that was rejection was far less of a worry than it needed to be. And actually, people were more inclined to help. Yeah, $100, here you go, man. But, and then it's like, oh gosh, I've got to ask another person for $100 to be rejected. Right? He went to a person's door with a plant and said, hey, can I plant this in your backyard? And they're like, oh man, no, I've got a puppy and the puppy's going to dig it up. But my neighbor, she's a big plant lady. She'd love that. So he went to the neighbor and planted a plant in her backyard. Like random stuff, but it totally transformed their rejection tolerance. And for me, if I have a big goal or if I have an idea to come to mind, I'll write it down on my phone. And in parentheses, I'll say rejection therapy, just as a trigger, because it reminds me later to reach out to that person, to make that bold move and embrace the rejection if it comes. Absolutely. But more often than not, Braiden, the rejection doesn't come, and it more so unlocks the door to opportunity. So that idea of rejection therapy, that was really one that actually helped me put it into practice.
Absolutely. So I want to take a step back and talk more about your life. You obviously live stellar now, right? That's your thing.
Try to. Yeah.
Have you always lived stellar in your personal life?
You're asking a eternal optimist or positive, dude. So like my knee-jerk reaction was like, I've obviously had challenges. Life has not been necessarily easy, but God gave me a gift of positivity that really helps me make lemonade out of lemons. So it's, in hard moments, like my brain doesn't even file them away as hard moments. It files them away as like growth moments. For example, one silly example is when I was doing coaching and I was like, yeah, I'm going to host a workshop. So I hosted this workshop. I put it out on social media. I had like 20 people respond and they're like, oh, Dave, this sounds amazing. I'll be there. So I sent out the link. No one showed up, Braiden. No one showed up. So I'm sitting there like this, like video workshop ready to go. And like, no one there. 15 minutes later, I was like, freak, So I closed the laptop and I was like, heck no, I've got this incredible presentation ready to go. So like, I'm going to freaking practice this thing. So I had a live audience of no one, but I was on camera and I still delivered that presentation, knocked the socks off of it. No one was there to see it. The man is awesome practice. So that's where, thank heavens, I guess life has taught me that I am a lot happier when I choose the positive route than when I marinade on the bummer. So
I love this. So my question is, a lot of people out there would love to resonate with that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Everybody wants to think like that. Yeah. Everybody wants to be able to say, I worked hard to put this workshop together. Nobody showed up. And instantly I transformed from a, oh crap, to a, heck yeah, let's do this.
I crushed it.
No, let's just, exactly, I crushed that.
Right?
No, let's be real here. Everybody has the ability to feel emotion and transform it within about 20 seconds. Like, if you actually give yourself the time to feel emotion, to think a thought, you will work through it quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
How can the average, I don't even want to say average, how can the person listening to this that's thinking, man, I really wish I turned my hardships into, I wish I filed them in my brain as growth opportunities, and I wish I took my frustrations and transformed into goodness within a matter of moments.
Yeah.
How can that person that's struggling to do that do what you do?
That's a great question. And I think of from a young age, I've never even seen the show, but when I would turn on that, I don't know, alter ego, I don't know the word for it, but like alter ego of like uber positive, my mom would be like, oh, you're such an Eddie Haskell. And basically for the old timers, they'd recognize, but Eddie Haskell, I think, was this character that was just like, everything was great and it was just the way he liked it. And he was just living his best life regardless of what happened to him, So with that, I would start to do that where it's like, oh man, are we having something that I didn't love for dinner? It's like, oh man, spaghetti again, the seventh day this week. That's perfect. Good thing, these carbohydrates are great for me, and awesome. Thanks for making dinner, Mom. It just totally, like, I had this character I could lean into. And when I'd go to someone else, my friends' houses, and they would, I don't know, their moms would, make a meal for us or drive me home. And it was more than just like, hey, thanks for the ride. But it was like, hey, thanks for the ride. And you have a great taste in music. Even if it was music I hated, the whole drive. But it was, it wasn't like I was just faking it, but I was speaking how I wanted to feel. I wanted to feel stoked that they had a terrible taste in music, but like it made them happy. So I could either fester on it and like be frustrated myself, or it could be like, hey, you have a great passion for music, and right. And so it's funny, but in the moment, I just hate feeling crappy for other things happening in life, or like when life happens to me, like bummer situations happen to me. It's like, man, that sucks. I'll be the first to say that sucks, but I feel a lot better when I look for the nuggets of wisdom in this, or for the growth that came from this, versus just festering on it.
Absolutely. Well
And that
said.
from relationships, that didn't work out. It's like, man, in the moment, like that's a huge bummer. But hindsight and living in the moment, trusting, the life that you're leading, trusting that, putting faith. I'm a huge believer in God. It's like, man, trusting him, acting in faith has never led me astray.
Absolutely.
That takes practice, as you know. And we've got to put in the reps. So put in the reps for the small things, and then you're prepped for those big things. Do some heavy lifting.
Absolutely. You just dropped, so many valuable aspects of this. So many valuable nuggets of gold.
Oh,
And
good.
what I really took from this is you just have a victor mindset. Like a victor isn't saying that everything is rainbows and unicorns all the time. A victor is somebody that's willing to see the challenge, is willing to say, oh, that hurt real bad, and this is how we're going to overcome it.
Great point. And I want to clarify, Braiden, because you bring up a great point. That's not to say I don't feel those feelings. That big major suck in life. Like, I feel that. I just hate to marinate on it. And so that's where I'm not sweeping it under the rug, but I'm staring it in the face and saying, I see you, I feel you. And I'm going to choose to feel this way because I feel a heck of a lot better when I find the wisdom and power in situations versus the bummer and the suck. So,
absolutely. It being, like you said, like being a victor isn't, you mentioned the ordinary per se coaches on that trail, right?
yeah. Yep.
Victors and victims look all the same. We all have eyes, we all have ears, we all have the same chemistry. The only difference is who the person is and the mindset.
Yeah.
Why not be the victor? The only difference is that victims see the challenge and stay with the challenge. Maybe they make it about themselves. Maybe they make it permanent in their life. Like,
yes,
I'm poor, so I'm going to be this way forever. And the victor says, you know what? This sucks. I am poor right now, and I'm not going to be this way in a year. And this is how I'm going to make it so that I live a wealthy life.
Totally. No, I do need to say I married someone who, like, if you do the Myers-Briggs test, we are on opposite sides of the scale. And so I am of the belief of, like, when a bummer situation happens, you touch the hot stove, don't keep your freaking hand on the stove, like, snap that thing back and move on. However, I recognize there are personality types out there who don't snap back, and they need to leave their hand burning on the stove a little bit longer to sit in those bummer feelings. And so I'm not saying my mindset is the one all be all or the best. I'm just saying that's worked for me. That's the way I've noticed, the way I'm made, and the way my lens is on life. And to me, that's been my superpower, is to take on situations and challenges that way. But if there's any listeners out there who are maybe opposite on the Myers-Briggs scale, and they're like, oh man, I need to sit with those hard feelings for a little bit longer. And that's okay too. That's okay. Because if anything, I've learned the last thing my wife wants to hear when she's having a bummer moment is for Happy Dave to walk through the door. Just be like, oh, it's all right. Isn't it a freaking stellar day, honey? Let's go do something amazing. It's like, like, she doesn't want to hear that. And I don't blame her, right? I don't blame her for that. Like, she wants to sit in that feeling a little bit. And so that's where I also have learned to recognize, read the room. So
she's going to say, hey, babe, I just booked you a 5-day stay in Europe where you're going to do another five marathons.
Totally. Totally. And I'm going to be here just, I need some time to process.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you bring up a valid point, and a lot of the people I coach, which ultimately comes down to entrepreneurs, what causes them to be stuck is on inauthenticity. Now, let me break that down further. where inauthenticity comes from genuinely comes from the act of comparison. I'm here, they're there, I should be there.
Yep.
Help for somebody that's struggling with comparison, like, Dave is transforming his emotions in moments time and moving on. I can't do that.
Yeah.
Speak to that person. How can they start to overcome being okay not comparing themselves to others?
Yeah. I think there's a phrase in the scriptures actually that says to be anxiously engaged in a good cause. Anxiously engaged. And for people who are anxiously engaged in a good cause, maybe that's their health, their relationships, their business, their reading, their hobbies, wherever they're anxiously engaged in, that's where they can lean into that. But what I find where people are most victim of comparison is when they are stalled in the water. They are sitting in the middle of the freaking ocean and their sails are down and they're just kind of, maybe it's analysis paralysis. Maybe they're the victim of something. But that's when I notice comparison can just cripple people. But for those who have their sails set and they are on a course for something, they can look out and see other yachts going in other directions. And maybe they're bigger yachts, smaller yachts, whatever. But they are confidently holding on tight to their lines and staying the course because they know where they're going and they know what they're doing and they feel great about their journey to get there. So if that metaphor makes sense to you, that's a lot of people, when they are feeling the negative impact of comparison, it's because they might not know their course. They might not know their next steps towards their dream that they're anxiously engaged in. But I've never met someone who has FOMO who has awesome goals that they're working towards, right? Like if I am saying no to my buddies texting me and messaging me to go do some cool adventures this weekend, it's like, oh, that'd be fun. But I'm staying the course. I've got this awesome date with my wife and a fun outing with my kiddos. And I can confidently love that because I know what I'm doing. I have a plan and I know my steps. So bundling that up, what I see is oftentimes people just don't have clarity. They're not pursuing anything. They're just kind of showing up in their day-to-day life, hoping for the best. And as you and I both know, hope is not a strategy. So that's where really nipping it in the bud right there is, let's take our focus outside of the comparison and start focusing on your dreams, your next steps, your awesome things that you're pursuing, to be anxiously engaged in that.
Yeah, you said that great. It's like, hey, you have a vision. Like, you know where you want to go and you know the next steps that need to be executed. And as long as you have that, you can put the blinders on and just go. Instead of focusing on George or Georgette over here. Like, who cares what they're? God created them for something else.
Yep. And I see that, Braiden, with social media is brutal for comparison. And it's also hard because I can be anxiously engaged in my cause of maybe this chapter I'm in is like growing my business. So I might not adventure as much and I might not do as many, exciting things because I'm just focused on growing my business. And then it's hard, that's hard when you're scrolling and you see travel and adventure and these other things that you value, but you're focusing on a different part of your life right there. And that's still challenging. But again, going back to clarity, you can come back to, I'm staying the course. I'm choosing to focus on these things. I'm choosing to use my time this way because I'm anxiously engaged in my good cause. And I also could celebrate, heck yes, Braiden, way to go for that. Awesome trip or cool thing you did. I could celebrate yours a little bit easier when I'm engaged in my own. Absolutely. But again, most people don't have exciting goals that they're working towards. They are not living their most authentic lives, doing the things that they value the most. And so that leaves them stalled in the water of the comparison game.
Absolutely.
And I use that
shiny thing syndrome. What's it called?
Yeah, totally. Well, and I use that example when I was working in Maui. I was working on a 65-foot yacht and we did sunset sails, snorkel trips. It was awesome. And I'll never forget, on one evening, we were on the 65-foot yacht, beautiful sailboat. and I'm passing around Mai Tais and drinks for people. And these two girls looked over at this other yacht that was out. And it was a pretty identical boat. It was a 65-foot yacht, catamaran style. And they're like, oh my gosh, look at those people. And it was like, look where you're standing. Like you are on that yacht, right? Like, and sometimes people aren't even on the yacht. And that, it's hard to compare. But I'm saying, even people on the yacht look at other yachts that are identical. I'm like, oh, look at that. It's like, holy cow, people. So that's where taking time for gratitude, like truly, like if I were to say one thing to help people the most with comparison is to, at the beginning or end of each day, jot down a few things you're grateful for. And man, it changes perspectives. All of a sudden it changes your lens from what you lack to what you have. And wow, that's a different feeling that just swarms you with that.
100%. And I mean, it's like, I'll just relate that to my story, right? I dreamt of being a coach and having a podcast and meeting these amazing people and, having X amount of dollars. Okay, now I have that, thankfully. And thankfully, I've met amazing people like yourself that are proud of me for my wins, and I'm proud of their wins. But do you know how easy it'd be like, but I'm not Tony Robbins yet. He may have a quote unquote different yacht than me.
Yeah.
But technically we're in the same journey right along it. And you hit the point. Be grateful for where you're at now. But go meet the people on it. Maybe it's a bigger yacht. And it's not a matter of, oh, look at them putting somebody on a pedestal. Go shake their hand. Hey, I got this yacht over here and I'm super proud of it. Can you coach me on how to get to yours?
That's life-changing what you're talking about.
Like comparisons, it's the victim-victor mindset of comparison, right? It's actually healthy to compare. My podcast has X amount of listeners. This podcast doesn't have this many listeners. Okay, you can either be the victim and be like, oh, look at them.
Yep.
Or you can say, that is so cool that person's making such a big impact and I want to get there. I'm going to go figure out how to do the same thing.
Yeah. That's gold. That's gold. And it's so hard. And I think recognizing the natural man is a concept, in our faith, that the natural man is jealous, envious, proud. And so when we do feel those feelings of, but their podcast is bigger, their yacht is bigger, just it helps to label it. The natural man is going to want to make me think my yacht is less cool now because there's bigger, better ones out there. And the natural man is going to make me want to be jealous or envious or proud. Then I'm not going to go talk to those people because they're probably uppity anyway, right? It's like, oh man, like total shift what you're talking about. Hey, the natural man's going to want to make me feel this way, but what does my best self do right now? What does my live stellar self do right now? I'm going to freaking shake that guy's hand and ask him about his yacht. Right?
Absolutely.
I'm going to ask them about their podcast, what they love about it, how they got there. And so often, Braiden, people are stoked to talk about their metaphorical yacht, their podcast that's growing, their Sprinter van, their family vacation. It's like, man, how'd you do that with 4 kids traveling? And what worked? What advice? What cautions would you give? And people love sharing it, talking about it.
Absolutely. So if you were to share a couple of key points on how one can live a stellar life, what would that be?
Well, in kind of the conversation we've had, know what excites you. Know what excites you, really gets you pumped, stoked in life, and make sure you're doing something to spark that every day. I can't travel to Europe and run 5 marathons every week, but I can do something to train for it. Every morning when I go for a run, I can think about that and know that I'm strengthening my body so that I can take action on that when the opportunity is there. So that's one, being anxiously engaged in your good cause. And then as I just said, know it gets you stoked, and then do something every day to touch that stoke factor. Another huge one for me is just challenge, embracing challenge, creating challenge. I heard a really cool quote from a blog post that said, how do you train for adversity? you create it. And people want to do incredible things. They want to do beautiful things, hard things, grow business, grow a podcast, get in better health, go on that trip, take their family somewhere, do something amazing. And that's hard. It's hard to do all those things, but it's also hard not to. So it's like, choose your hard. It's going to be hard either way. So choose your hard. It's hard to fall short. It's hard to not dream. It's hard to not be anxiously engaged in a good cause. It's hard to not be in good shape. And it's hard to be in good shape. So whatever it is, choose your hard. But like, you control it.
And honestly, from my experience, it's way harder to not reach for big things than it is to reach for big things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, let's be real. For anybody listening, and even myself, if I was where I'm at right now for the next 20 years, that just like hits me in the heart. Like, oh, don't get me wrong. I'm grateful for where I'm at right now.
For sure.
But to be in the same place for 20 years.
Yep.
Oof. That sounds way harder than even if I don't accomplish all of the goals that I set out to.
Totally.
Like, even if my goal in 10 years takes me 20 years to get to. That sounds way better to me than sitting where I'm at now.
For sure. Sure. So I totally agree with that. The one like habit that I'd add to that, not even habit, but just taking time each day to reflect. I really think that's just an ingredient that's missing in most people's everyday, because they just hustle. They hustle from one thing to the next, and then they go from one thing, and in between those times, they pull out their phones and they're just filling, they're consuming. A lot of people, most people are doing that. And so at the end of the day, they just kind of lived a day and then they move on to the next. Whereas if you can pause and reflect on what went well today, what am I excited to do tomorrow to touch that rocket fuel of a goal of mine? Oh man, even if I just write it down, just affirm it, that's pretty awesome. And so that simple like habit of daily reflection, I know is life-changing. I've seen it in my life, in other people's lives. So that would be my one challenge I'd throw out there for people, is to put your phone, set a timer for 10 minutes sometime throughout the day. Put your phone down and just think. Think about what excites you, what gets you stoked. What's your rocket fuel? And then what we can do about it.
Learn to be your own best friend. That's the best thing you could do in life.
Yeah.
A best friend will tell you the truth.
Yeah.
The good, the bad, the ugly. A best friend will listen to you. Listen to yourself.
Yeah.
Go have some fun by yourself. Go to Europe by yourself and run 5 marathons across 5 different countries.
that got me stoked, but it doesn't get too many other. But that's what the message of that, though, that I love is like, that was my misogi. That was one thing. That was my rocket fuel. But like, it's well within grasp. Like dreams don't have to break the bank, or you don't have to have a ton of time to touch a dream, or to just, get a little sample of it, right? Like, I wanted to beast out. How can I do that in the shortest amount of time? To be away from my kids and my callings and my job and everything else. I could carve out 7 days. Go do that.
Well said. So I have a couple quick hitter questions.
Yeah.
Oh, and before I even do that, I just want to say thank you. Like, you're a phenomenal person.
Oh, thank you, Braiden.
I'm looking forward to the day that I get to come up to Idaho or something of that nature, and we get to meet with Mike Zell and Braiden up there. By the way, I'm so grateful their parents' property was fine.
Oh my gosh, with the fires. Oh yes. Yeah, totally.
Such a blessing.
Yeah.
But there's just so many good people up there in that community that hopefully I get to come. Not even hopefully, I will be there out there.
Make it happen.
Person. Absolutely.
For sure.
Thank you for carving out the time.
Well, thank you, Braiden. I really appreciate it. I of course love talking about it, but I know we all are, family in the human race. Like, we're in it together. So it's awesome to talk about these great concepts that you and I and other people know are life-changing. And it's way easier said than done. And hopefully talking about it, people can jot down a few notes and one action item. What are your listeners going to do about what they just listened to? And that's what gets me excited. What are they going to do about it?
Absolutely. And I'm here to say that transformation is a moment.
Yeah.
Can this be that moment? Does that mean that you're going to transform and then everything's going to be easy? Absolutely not. There's times that I transformed one aspect of me and then somebody in my family didn't like it. And then that's another challenge you have to overcome. And that's okay.
For sure.
But are you willing to transform in this moment, even one thing, to better set up your life?
Beautiful. Beautiful.
So 2 quick hitter questions. One is, what is your definition of an authentic life?
Knowing who you are, knowing what lights you up, and going out and doing it. Like those 3, simple. Can I add some context to that?
Please do, yeah.
When I served a mission for my church, and I worked a lot with, typically in really wealthy areas. And it's hard to teach wealthy people oftentimes about like Jesus and about, the true meaning of life when they've got all the success the world would measure things up to. But I loved asking these people, like, hey, what would your advice for life be for a young guy? The world is his oyster. And one lady, without hesitation, she said, know who you are, set goals as to what you want to become, and then go out and do it. And that stood out to me so much in just such a clear way. Clarity is key. When you know who you are, when you know what you want to accomplish, then go out and do it. And when you're anxiously engaged in that going out and doing it part, that's living an authentic life to me.
I love it. And I think that will ring true to anybody. It's just the truth. Know who you are and go build your character. Go set those goals and really accomplish just that.
Totally.
I love it. If there was one last thing you could leave with the audience today, what would that be?
Anchor everything to character. They say the single greatest character trait needed to live your most fulfilling life. Out of all the character traits, think of all the character traits, like words that might snap to your mind right now. What's the single greatest attribute, character trait, to live your most fulfilling life? You don't have to answer it, but I'll tell you. It's resilience. Resilience. How do we build resilience, or what is it? Google definition will say that it's being, bouncing back from setbacks, maintaining a positive outlook through challenging situations, that kind of definition. One of my adventure buddies, Martin Frey, he said, that's true, Dave, but it also means being anti-fragile. And I love that word, anti-fragile. And I think of, if I could echo, that message of anchor everything you do to resilience. When bummer things happen, become more resilient by choosing the path you want to take from it, by choosing the lessons to learn. What wisdom did you gain from this? What power did you gain from this situation? That's building resilience. But complaining about it and whining about it and saying, woe is me, why this, why now? Unfortunately, that's not building resilience, right? So anchoring things to character traits of resilience, man, it's pretty cool. Like, what's the more resilient option, Dave? I can either hate this, or I can either see the wisdom and power in this. So I hope that makes sense, but I love that, being anti-fragile and strengthening that muscle to be more resilient.
Absolutely. It goes back to what I said before. If you live forever, you're either going to be a part of the group that says, what's the point? Or you're going to say, we can accomplish everything we want to in life. And the truth is, we may not live forever, but you can accomplish anything that you want to in this life. So go get it.
Amen.
Don't let anything stop you.
Love it. Love
Thank
it.
you so much, Dave. This has been an amazing podcast.
Thank you, Braiden. Totally. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to the Journey to Authenticity podcast. If you liked what both David and myself said today, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. This helps me to get the most optimal guests to drive amazing impact as well as bring the most entertainment to you. Also, why I have you here. If you're in a position where you're really ready to transform your life, you're ready to live a stellar life, either go to braidenbelnap.com or the link below, and let's get that journey going. Let's sit down. Let's really create and understand where you're at, where you want to go, and I myself can help create the plan on how to get there. Have a good one, everybody.